Attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, this is Ann Cooper, and thank you for joining us today for our Guide to the Lunchbox. I'm very excited to have you all here and really excited to be presenting the Lunchbox for you to really see all the tools we have there. I'm going to do a few introductions. We have with us today myself, Beth Collins, who will be doing a lot of the showing you the stuff on the lunchbox. Emily Miller and Lindsay Vaughn are program people here at the district. So there's four of us on the webinar, and we're going to show you everything we have. So here's the agenda. We're going to be giving you the webinar. We're going to be showing you all the features. We're going to have questions and comments and talk about staying connected and grant opportunities. A little bit more about that before I hand it over to Beth. Here's some ground rules. All of you in the audience will be muted throughout the webinar, but if you have a question, you can type it into the questions tab. And we'll be monitoring those questions throughout the presentation and then answering all of the questions at the end. So a little bit about the Chef Ann Foundation. It was formerly the Food Family Farming Foundation. It was founded in 2009. It really came about because as Beth and I were doing work in school food, first in New York and then in Berkeley, everyone kept asking us for recipes, for tools. You know, we really want to make change, but we don't really know how. You know, what can you do to help us? So we really started down this path of doing the lunchbox. And when I first envisioned it, I actually thought it would be a box with a bunch of papers in it, like a manual, you know, because I really didn't even in the beginning think that it would be all digital. But of course, you know, the digital world we're in, as we started exploring it, it became what it is today, a fully digitally based program, the Lunchbox. The foundation's based in Colorado. And we work to provide schools and school districts and food service directors, advocates, all the tools they need and resources to segue from highly processed to scratch-cooked foods so that all schools really can take advantage of not only all of the work that we've done, but all the best practices that schools do all across the country. With that, I'll hand it over to Beth.
Good. I'm in the East Coast, so it's actually afternoon here. I know it's morning in Colorado. Welcome everybody. This is our overview webinar. We did our first one last month, and so we should be better at it this time. But really want to take the opportunity to show you as much of the lunchbox as we can. And I'm going to the site. And I'm going to start off by actually registering on the site. I cleared my cookies before we started the webinar so I could show you this. One of the things about the Lunchbox that I think is really important to remember is this is an open source site. It's free to all users. It costs nothing. And the only way that we can really drive funders to support us is through showing them who's using the site, not necessarily individuals, but how many people, where do they work, that kind of just the basic information that I'm typing in right here. And when you fill this out, if you do it the first time you come to the site, you won't be prompted again unless you go to the website from a different computer. If you actually work for a school district, if I click school, it'll take you to another field that actually allows you to select what school district you are from, and that's really useful for us because we can identify what part of the country people are coming to the Lunchbox from. But that registration process, as you can see, just takes a second, and what it does is if you don't register on the Lunchbox and then you go to download something, which you'll see later, it will prompt you to fill it out. You'll keep being prompted, and eventually it may block you from allowing to download if you don't fill it out. So we just really encourage people to share in this process and register the first time you come on. I'm working on a small laptop, so I'm noticing that my screen is it's not lining up just perfectly, but marketing should really be over on the right, but I'm on a tiny laptop with a lot of whatever they call that, I forget what you call it when it's very tiny. Everything's tiny. Anyway, so one of the key things that we did with the lunchbox on the redesign, and I want to big shout out to Colorado Health Foundation that provided a very large grant for us to do the redesign. The lunchbox was first launched in 2010 from another very generous donation from the Whole Foods Foundation, the Whole Foods Market, and the Whole Kids Foundation. And in the 4 years that we had the former site up, we learned a lot about navigation and what worked and what didn't. So in this new site, we worked a lot on trying to make it as easy as possible for the user to get around the site. And from the home page, this top line navigation that has these drop downs is found on every page. So we call this the above the fold. So basically down here where it says register for the lunchbox, that's sort of the midpoint of the page. There is a search function up here that's on every page, and you can always get to the Chef Ann Foundation site, which we'll talk a little bit about later, and the lunch line, which is our blog feed, comes in also off that top line. You can always get to that. I write blogs for operations for both the salad bar programs and the lunchbox every month, and we have guest bloggers, and Emily actually does some great interviews of our grantees. And so if you do sign up for either for our blog posts or our newsletter, you'll always be alerted and get a regular feed on that. You can see on the below the fold part of the home page, the blogs are listed. Research and case studies, there's always a highlight that changes every month, and you can see in the drop down, research and case studies is found there. I'm going to move right on to the recipes and menu section. The recipes, as Ann said, is really what got us to the lunchbox in the first place. When Ann and I would go out into the field working together, doing assessments and talking to people, it was always recipes that were the number one thing that people were asking for. And this time I think we've really got a nice functioning system. We're running the recipes on Horizon software, the OneSource software, which is a K-12 software. Some of you may be very familiar with it. A lot of the K-12 softwares are very similar in how they operate, so I think that was one of the things we really wanted to improve, so that it was really easy for users to find recipes and understand what the recipe looked like, that it would be familiar. When you come to this main landing page, it has both recipes and menu cycles on it, and you can see you've got navigation down here, and then you also have navigation here. We probably tripled up on navigation just to make it easy for people to get around, but the recipe module is fairly intuitive, and it's got a search bar. You can search by category or by name or recipe number if you get so familiar that you're going to start searching by numbers, as our lovely RD team likes to search by numbers. I don't know if Amy's on today, but she did sign up. She's Amy Glotty, who works out in Oakland. Call out to her. She was awesome helping us with this site build. We're going to just show you how to do a basic search. I'm going to type in chicken, and we'll open up Chicken Street Tacos. And the search function is exactly the way it works in Horizon. It's colored like the lunchbox. They call it the skinning of the website, but the actual page design is based on the Horizon website. The ingredients will load, so it's always going to open on this view with the ingredients. Recipe instructions is the second tab. I want to call out that in this pre-preparation and instruction area, you're going to find several things there. There might be something specific to that recipe that the menu planner wanted to call out. In this case, we mentioned that this is prepared with black beans and pico de gallo as sides for this dish. The other thing you'll find in that pre-preparation area is the yield factor, if a yield factor is involved in a recipe. In the software itself, it has it in a different spot. And one of the things that we had to do with the lunchbox is just try to make it so that everything fit on the page space that we had. The meal pattern components, our contributions are on this tab, and if there is a photo, that photo tab will show up and there'll be a photo. If there's no photo associated with the recipe, that tab just won't be there. I want to show you scaling, which is probably the number one thing that people love about the recipe modules, that they can scale a recipe. And you just go up to this standard yield. In this case, on this recipe, it's 48. We're going to change it to 150. And you hit scale, and it'll take a minute, or not even a minute, for the ingredients to load. And you can see the poundage changed there. And you can always reset it back to its original just by clicking that reset button. Once you've scaled the recipe, or even if you don't want to scale it, you can also scale down. You could go down to 20 or whatever you would like. You can export the recipe, and up at the top, these two green buttons, you can export it either as a PDF or as an Excel file. Both of the files look the same. Just clicking on it. Because I registered, I did not get a prompt to register, but if I had not registered when I first came onto the site that first time, I would have gotten another registration box a little bit different than the one that I showed you the login. It would be up at the top of the page. The only other technical issue that some people may run into, depending on their browser, is they might get a pop-up blocker when they go to download, and you'll usually get a message to disable a pop-up blocker if that's the case. The recipe looks, this is exactly what it looks like if you export it out of Horizon. It has the ingredients, the preparation instructions, the nutritional analysis, and then the pull ticket for inventory is all on this printout. The other features that are from the recipe page are you could click on analysis and it'll pull up just the nutrient analysis. You can also pull up costing. The database is based on Boulder Valley School District's recipes, so that means that the costing is relative to the contracts that they have in place this year. This is a secondary recipe, so it's got 2 tacos. It's 73 cents for secondary for 2 tacos. Obviously, depending on which ingredient you're using, that costing piece would be different. We would expect that people, if they wanted to input this into their own system, they can export the recipe, put it in with your ingredients, and there are some differences depending. This is a commodity thigh strip that it's actually a pass-through item from Pilgrim's Pride, some of you may be familiar with. So that's available, and that's pretty much it on the recipes. It's really a great it's a great tool. We have districts using the recipes regularly. Ann, do you have anything else you want to add about the recipes before I move on to menu cycles?
Yes.
I guess not.
Okay. That was great. The couple things I'd like to say is there's about 230 or 40 recipes on this database right now. And the reason this is really such an integral part of the site is that there's no other website that we know of out there where the recipes are actually exploitable, that they are all verified by outside RDs, that they are all compliant to the current Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act guidelines, and also work into menu cycles. So this is something that we've worked long and hard to really make a very vibrant part of the site, and we'd love for all of you to use the recipes and really talk to us and give us feedback and things like that.
Great. I'm going to move on to the menu cycles. What we did with the menu cycles is we added all of the cycles that Boulder is using, so those are all attributable to the recipes that are in this database. Boulder does 1 and 2 week cycles in breakfast. They have, for elementary, they do have breakfast in the classroom as well as cafeteria breakfast. So you see there's different cycles there for that. I'm going to go to the lunch tab. All the tabs for the different age groups are set up the same. In Horizon, the way that they when you create your menu cycles, you have options of looking at it in 2 views. We went ahead and posted both views because people like different things. A lot of people like to look at a cycle in a calendar like this. The downside of this is it doesn't have the recipe numbers on it. So what we did was we also posted the scheduled menu view, and a lot of menu planners like this view because it has the stock code, or in this case the recipe numbers, as well as stock codes for things like milk, right in the cycle document. So you could save this and then go through the website and take a look at the recipes, see if you liked that week or you wanted to use things out of that cycle. And the concept here isn't necessarily that you're going to use this out of the box, but there are certainly districts I know that are using these cycles, particularly some of the smaller districts that don't have the advantage of having software themselves or an RD on staff, or they just have more things to do. They're wearing a lot of hats. The cycles are also listed by the week with the USDA certification document, as well as the menu cycle view that I just showed you. You're all probably very familiar with these USDA spreadsheets. And that's really it for the cycles. We are planning on adding more cycles. One of the things I run into a lot when I'm out on assessments, particularly in rural districts and smaller districts, we've got districts running 4-day weeks now. We have districts that are running both pre-K programs and dinner programs, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for us to add recipes and cycles to go along with them that will be helpful for different districts to use, or to just, like I said, you've got the recipes here, you can use them and add them to cycles that you're working with already. And do you have anything you want to add on menu cycles before I move on?
I guess I would just want to add that, again, this is something that we felt was really, really important to be able to pull new kinds of scratch-cooked recipes into cycles, to be able to show that they are, CN certified and they are compliant, and that people can actually use this part of the website to pull menus together and to show that they are compliant. And I think that that's a great advantage to being able to these menus and these recipes in the cycles.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to the procurement area, and I want to show how the design of the website is set up in all of these sections other than recipes and menus. Because the recipes and menus are specifically tied to the Horizon software setup, it's really a unique section within the site. The other areas of the site that are very similar in how they're laid out and how you navigate them is procurement, management, and under programs, the salad bar and breakfast area. So using procurement as an example, each page has these gray boxes as a navigation area, or it has this sidebar navigation. I tend to use this sidebar navigation the most, but all of the sections are similar. So once you get familiar with using it, you develop your own habits. In addition to the sidebar navigation, once you go into a section, like in this case, menu development, you'll see this top line navigation that takes you deeper into each section. And I'm going to go into cycle planning to show you, what an interior page looks like. We were just talking about menu cycles. We have a lot of information here about how do you build a cycle, how do you determine how many weeks, things to consider. Everything in the site is really geared towards the food service teams that are looking to either enhance their current program, shift their program into using more cooking from scratch, and the different considerations that you want to use with regards to that. The menu cycles that we're showing you are actually based on this worksheet, which will take a second to open. This is the same cycle planning workbook that was developed in Boulder that we use to plan out a 6-week cycle, which is their preferred. This 6-week cycle is exactly what's up there in the menu cycle section. And one of the things that we encourage doing, particularly when we're talking about fiscal management of scratch programs, is really understanding how often does something show up on the menu, what days does it not show up, when do you need to change it, and looking at the whole year. A lot of districts don't do this. When I go out into assessments, it's really, some districts do look at the whole year, but I would say as a whole, most of them are not looking beyond their cycles necessarily. They may or may not know how many times an item is offered in a year. And quite frankly, in scratch cooking, we just can't afford to not try to dial in our costs that tightly. So we like to look at the whole year. We look at how many times something's offered. And in Boulder's case, they actually utilize this detail to create year-long calendars that are funded to use for marketing as well, which is another neat feature about it. So that's our menu planning. There's a lot of other areas in the procurement. I'm going to go to vendor relationships. Procurement is such a deep topic. It's sort of endless. We will actually continue to add content under procurement because it's really the heart of it. You're writing your menu, creating menus, and then your whole sourcing piece is so important in your scratch cook programs. This section, for example, goes through the whole overview of your procurement process. We've provided a lot of resources that are excellent resources from the USDA, from National Food Service Management Institute, School Food Focus, Pew Charitable Trust. We have so many different resources that really enhance our knowledge base. One of the key things we try to do is continually learn about what's going on out in the field. We have many partners working in the field, and we really try to collaborate and bring resources to the public through this platform. That's one of the key things that we try to accomplish through this. One thing to point out is that in these sections, as you can see, we've got this whole sidebar navigation. You go to one of these topics, and then there's all this navigation. And one of the things that I was actually working on the content, and I was looking for something that I had written. I was like, how are we supposed to be able to find things once we put them up here? And so it's like we have to, on each section, we really need to have a list of what's in the section. So in the management section, in the procurement section, and in the under salad bar and breakfast, we have at that bottom of the navigation, we have the tools and resource list. And in each section, whatever's been linked in the section is going to be in this table at the end. So if it's a tool, it's something that we created, and if it's a resource, it's something that was referenced. So in this case, you can see anything that was referenced in the procurement section is going to be listed here. It'll have the source, the title with a link to it, and then a description. So and if it's been talked about in one section, let's say I'm talking about menu cost under procurement, and then I go to the management section and I talk about the same spreadsheet, that spreadsheet's going to be referenced and listed in both procurement and management. So you don't have to move out of the section you're in to find something. So that part I thought was very important to make sure that we had dialed in so that we didn't have that whole hunt and peck and hunting through the pages to try to find something. I'm going to move to management. As we know, fiscal management is what makes everything possible. We have almost no money to work with in school food, so our ability to manage our resources is absolutely critical. And in programs that are taking on any kind of complex change, we've tried to provide the tools that we use when we're out in the field to assess and to assist districts in their change work. So we have in each of these sections, I'll just go into one of them so that you can see. We have a step-by-step for just the labor cost area with position control, hours assigned to hours worked. These are all tools that you can, I'll open the meals per labor hour. It's one of our favorite worksheets. Everyone likes to debate their meals per labor hour, but it's a great tool to measure what's going on in your program, to give you a baseline to work with. Each of these spreadsheets that are in this section were created by our fiscal expert, Nancy Howitt, who I work with. She's based out of Eureka, California. She's an amazing resource. And on each spreadsheet, there's a sample and instruction page. So she writes out the important information, and then so that you can kind of see how the spreadsheet works. And then there's a new spreadsheet with all the formulas in there. You can download this spreadsheet, and you can customize it for your own use, put in your own data. But all of the worksheets are available, and they're all, again, would be listed in that management tools and resources area. Everything that's in this section is listed, and I'll tell you that there's physical tools are duplicated throughout the website. For example, under the salad bar section, we make many references to labor, food cost, and anytime these tools are referenced, they're listed in that section. So there's really nothing that happens in the lunchbox. From our perspective, anything you're going to do, you really have to evaluate whether you can afford to do it and how you're going to do it. Also under management, we have the human resources area has organizational charts, job descriptions. We talk about organizing for change, the types of things you may have to do or want to look at within your program if you're going to change to a more complex food production model. Facilities also has tools on assessing what do you have now. Are you going to consolidate? Are you purchasing equipment? There's a lot of all of this is really tied into self-assessment and taking a look at what works for what you're doing now and where you want to go. So how are we doing on time? We're about halfway. I want to take you to the marketing section. As you know, at the end of the day, we need meal counts. Meal counts just drive everything. So as most of you know, marketing is it's education. I always say marketing is education. I mean, we really are educating people to bring them to our programs, to try our foods, and there's many different strategies. We've provided some favorites of ours, and we'll continue to expand this area. I'm just going to take you to the lunchroom education. This section is organized a little bit differently than the other sections. Each of these, for example, under this section, each of these areas has a how-to guide, and to get to that how-to guide, it's down at the bottom of each of those pages. I'm going to go ahead and click on the how-to guide, and the how-to guide will take you step by step through a process of doing a rainbow day, which is one of our favorite activities to introduce kids to fresh fruits and vegetables and really engage them. And all the pieces that you might need for that event are hot linked in here, and the step-by-step, and that is mimicked through any of these other programs. One of the other really wildly popular all over the country are not the chef demos I wanted to take you to, junior chef competitions. I love going into different parts of the country and seeing what they're doing with their with kids cooking, and this is a really popular engagement activity. We have step-by-step again here. The how-to guide is down here in the documents and resource area, with everything from the letters that you send out to the requirements of how they need to provide a recipe to you and things like that. Everything you need is in here. And another area I wanted to show you is the posters and signs area. We just added some new content to this. A lot of school districts have access to their own print shops and can print things at a reduced rate, and knowing that, everything that we put up here, we put in a print-ready size in both English and Spanish, and we have some cool stuff like our rainbow sticker. Everybody loves stickers, so that's a popular one. Posters, we have the salad bar signs that are really handy. We've got some menu signs, but the ones I wanted to show you are these Harvest of the Month collector cards. Boulder Valley's in the midst of a USDA Farm to School grant, and part of their It's a very complex grant that they did, and one of the projects was part of their marketing for Harvest of the Month was to create these trading cards, and I just love these. I think they're just beautiful, and we have these available for download. The kids really get into them. I actually am doing a little case study on this project, so I saw how the kids are when they serve one of these dishes, like something with pumpkin, and when that's first offered, they collect these cards, and what's going to happen with these cards, I forget. They're going to trade them in May.
We're going to have a Boulder Valley School District Day at the Farmers Market on May 2nd, and all the farmers are going to be there. The kids can bring their cards, get them autographed by the farmers, because we have farmer cards as well that we'll be doing tastings, and so we have a full collection. It's a really great program. The kids love it. It's amazing how into these cards the kids are.
Yeah, and the other thing, I actually love these cards because I love farmers. They're like my favorite. And that's kind of what got me into food in the first place, was the whole farm and farmer thing. And I'll be a farmer, and maybe that might be my next career. I've changed careers quite a few times in my life, and I'm still young. I'm only 58, so there's still time. But I love these farmer cards. We put these up as an example, and I think it's really a great connecting activity for kids when they meet the farmers in Boulder. They had several opportunities. The farmers, when they do their procurement relationships, actually in their request for qualifications document, one of the questions for the farmers is if they are willing to participate in school-based activities, and the farmers, all of these farmers, of course, said yes, and then they made these beautiful trading cards with the farmers on them. So anyway, I just wanted to show this off because I just think they're so gorgeous. But how are we doing? Do we have some questions?
We only have one question right now,
Okay,
but I would like to remind everyone to go ahead and type in their questions. And we're going to go back to our PowerPoint now.
Yeah. If you ask some questions, last time people asked questions, then we went back into the lunchbox relative to the questions. But
the question we have right now is, looking at the chicken taco listing, why did I not see a tortilla in the list? It's actually the last item on the list. So it is in the recipe, and I just double-checked that. I will say that when we were on the last webinar, somebody said it doesn't say that the tortillas are whole grain in the recipe, although when you go to the link to the inventory, it says it there. And we understand that that may be hard for some compliance, depending on who's doing your compliance, and we are going to change that. So we'll actually say it in the recipe as well as in the inventory.
Yeah, because actually I know that a lot of the grain items have a WG in them, and that's always it really depends on who's entering inventory. You do want to have your inventory standards, and that question came up, and we'll make sure we have the WG in there just to help people. One of the pieces that I'd like to I haven't figured out exactly how we'll share it, but there's so much information just on inventory items, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration across the country. I meet people from other districts, and we talk about different products that they're able to access in their part of the country versus another part of the country, and Boulder's inventory database is theirs, basically. There are items like their tortillas can only be sourced in Boulder, the ones that they use. They've got lots of tortilla makers in the Denver area, and they've gotten quite creative on figuring out how to make a absolutely outstanding whole grain tortilla that kids will eat that they like, which is pretty awesome. But depending on who you're working with and where you are, I think we have more opportunity to share more inventory detail and figure out a way to make that shareable. It's because it's on the back end of the software, it's a little bit harder to figure out the best method for sharing that, sharing specifications and things like that. Any other questions?
So I'd love to see, there are no other questions right now, although I'd love to see some more questions. And Beth, while we're waiting for questions, why don't you show us some of the other projects that we have, which is great.
Yes. The lunchbox is Chef Ann Foundation's primary project, but we do have several others that are active right now. We are the managing partner of Let's Move Salad Bars to Schools, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. That project's been around since 2011, I think. Did we start in 2011? And we're up to 4,000 salad bars granted. That is a partnership with Whole Kids Foundation, the United Fresh Produce Association, the National Fruit and Vegetable Alliance, and Chef Ann, and that's an ongoing rolling grant situation, so we're very busy with that. We have a new grant, the Mission Nutrition Grant, which is just in its first, we piloted out, I think, 15 grants earlier this year, and it's now also an open enrollment type grant. It's a $2,500 cash grant that is limited to purchase of fruits and vegetables that can be used in nutrition education activities. So it's that food cost cannot be attributed to the reimbursable meal. It needs to be used for projects that you devise that would affect all kids in the school, or offered to all kids in the school. Like a tasting would be a good example. We had some really creative and interesting project proposals in the first round, and we're getting ready actually to grant out. I think we have about 8 grants to grant out very soon, and we're looking for more funding for that because it seems to be pretty popular grant. A lot of school districts just don't have the extra funds to help them do those types of projects. We also have our Healthy Breakfast for Kids grant. We're just finishing up a grant that was restricted to the state of Michigan, and it's a nice grant. I'm just taking you right to the Chef Ann Foundation site. There's a lot of great stuff on this site as well. The Chef Ann Foundation site tends to have more of a parent perspective, and we have our parent advocacy toolkit is on this site, and it's really focused on trying to help parents navigate this area of school food change. We are approached by parents all the time, and I think it's hard sometimes for parents to really understand what is school food. The whole regulatory environment is such a mystery to most people. Sometimes it's even a mystery to us, but we do try to be experts in it. We have to continuously keep educating ourselves to stay up to date, but we are trying in the parent advocacy area to give parents guidance for how to approach their school district, what they need to know, and things like that. So that's also an area that we're continuing to expand. We also have home recipes that are on this site, and links to, obviously, to all of our programs. And do you have anything you want to add to that?
So Beth, well, we have another question. So the question is, I didn't see if the recipes included the meal contributions to the USDA meal pattern. Are those factored and included in each recipe?
Yeah,
and indeed
I can show them. I'll go back to the lunchbox. I have a lot of tabs open now. My computer just keeps working away here. It's I'll pull up that same recipe. It's a tab. The tabs are because of the coloring of the site, I think they're not as noticeable when you're on there, but there's a meal contribution tab. It's the tab after method. So they're right here. Food groups and meal patterns are here. Meat alternative, grains, calories, fat, sodium. In this case, there's no vegetables. So.
But if there were vegetables, you'd see the different colors. So all the recipes can be fully compliant and have all the contributions right in the recipe. And again, also on the cycle menus. Beth, the next question is, are we planning to build out more breakfast recipes?
Yeah, breakfast is tough. If anybody who's spent time on the lunchbox, you can see that Boulder doesn't do a lot of breakfast recipes. I go into districts a lot because I do assessment work, and it's always amazing to me how many districts are still, cooking from scratch. We see a predominant use of processed foods, however, in the hot breakfast area. But we do see some pretty great recipes for things that are, cold items like bar type items and egg items and things like that. There are still districts doing scratch, but we have some recipes. I think we have a breakfast burrito recipe and stuff. But yes, we're always interested in adding recipes, but it is something that's relatively expensive, so we need funding. If there's any funders listening to this, listening to our webinar today, it's a great area of investment in the lunchbox, and we test the recipes. We go through a whole testing process to standardize the recipes, and then we do kid testing on the recipes, unless if we're provided a recipe that's from another district that the recipe's already been tested, we'll skip that step, and then we do the photography, and then our RD team goes through and analyzes the recipe, makes sure we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's, make sure everything is perfect there, and inputs the recipe. So it's a process, and but yes. The short answer would have been yes.
The short answer, yes, would have been yes. And we are in Boulder right now. We're working on we're doing all of our recipe testing now for next year, and we're actually doing recipe testing on scratch cooked breakfast items. So we may have some more of those by middle of the summer if we can get some funding. So we do have a question that says, what recipes have been popular among the Boulder students? So in Boulder, we cook everything from scratch except for a very handful of items that are made for us by local companies, like our tamales or our pot stickers. We don't make ourselves. But the interesting thing about the chicken street tacos is that was a junior chef competition recipe. So we run 2 junior chef competitions a year, and sometimes the winning recipe or the winning 2 recipes would be on our menu for the following year, and that's been on for a couple of years. But some of the the recipes that kids have really loved is all the roast chicken recipes, the oven fried chicken, roast turkey, lasagna, the chicken tacos the kids really love. Nachos, which I'm sure all of you know the kids love nachos, but we make our own nacho beef, and it has pureed beans in it to bring some of the fat down. And we make our own cheese sauce for the nachos, so those recipes are in there. Pulled pork sandwiches, those have been on the menu a couple years. The kids really, really like it.
Actually, because you mentioned the nachos, let me just point out one thing, that like a lot of K-12 softwares, if a recipe has a sub-recipe in it, in this case, the taco meat is a sub-recipe, you do have to pull up it will not print out the detail of the sub-recipe when you print from the main recipe. In this case, I actually think that we should probably put the taco meat recipe right in here since it's such a simple recipe, but I do want to call out the fact that there are sub-recipes, and you can always tell it's a sub-recipe because it'll have a letter associated with it, and that's just an aside for those of you who are menu planners.
Okay, I've got a couple more questions. The first question is, has the new mac and cheese recipe been better received than the old version? And the answer is yes. The new mac and cheese recipe is finally a winner. You wouldn't have thought. We have, besides myself, there's six chefs that work in the district, and you'd think between the 7 of us we could have made a mac and cheese recipe that really worked. But when we switched to whole grain pasta, and even dependent upon the cheese, we had a lot of problems. But I think we finally have a mac and cheese recipe that really, really works and is bomb-proof, and the cheese sauce doesn't break, and the whole thing really works.
We actually don't have that recipe up as mac and cheese, but the cheese sauce recipe, we just need to go ahead and add that, because the cheese sauce recipe we have up here is the nacho version, which has the spices in it. It's actually the exact same recipe with this, but it has spices in it.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and change that. And then the next question is, are there tools on the website to assist in calculating the meal contributions from a recipe, specifically in regards to vegetables? And that's actually in the recipe. So Beth, if you want to go back to, if you want to go to a recipe.
To calculate them in the recipe itself, because they're already in there.
Right.
I think that question sounds like what they're asking is, do we have another tool to calculate meal contributions of vegetables, or is it relative to the recipe itself?
Well, whoever wrote that, if you want to specify, in the individual recipes, it has all the vegetable contributions, but what we don't have up here is the spreadsheet that you can use to actually see what the contribution is per recipe. But we actually do have that kind of a spreadsheet, and I think we could probably put it up there.
Are you talking about the USDA spreadsheet?
Let's see. Oh, so here's the backup question. For our own recipe development, we need help calculating the contribution of vegetables in a recipe we're developing. So there is a USDA spreadsheet for calculations, and then there's another one that we also worked on that was color-coded for the different vegetables so that you could see per recipe in the color coding. But what we really used that more was not individual recipes, but
we used that more for cycle development.
The cycle development. So as opposed to trying to figure it out per recipe, since the recipe in and of itself isn't compliant or non-compliant for the most part, then we would do it on a weekly process, and we can actually put that spreadsheet up here, and we will.
Okay. Actually, if we had Amy on speaker right now, she could speak to that. Well, one of these, we want to have one of our webinars with our RD team, because they're wonderful and so knowledgeable, and they answer things in a much clearer way about the stuff on components than I certainly do. I really appreciate the RD team. They're the best. Any other questions?
Okay, another question. Yep, does the tool offer guidance on how to cook whole grain pasta correctly?
It offers guidance on how to cook the pasta that you guys are using. Which one are you using now? What are you guys using? I know you're not using Barilla anymore.
I'm not
Zarega?
sure. Oh, Zarega. We're using Zarega. That's right.
Let's actually go to a pasta recipe. I think, there's a lot of variables, and no matter how well you write your method, there's certainly a lot of variables on whether that pasta is going to be handled perfectly in your kitchens. I mean, that's just a bottom line. We actually also have videos on this type of work. But if we could do a video and cook pasta 100 times perfectly in a row, it would be, and everybody really has the same challenges with the whole grain pasta. It also really depends, are you cooking it and holding it? Are you cooking it and shipping it? Are you cooking it and chilling it and then assembling it into a dish later? There's just so many variables. In Bolt, you can see here, they've got 11 steps on how Boulder handles their pasta cooking, and they're using Zarega now. And they had a lot of problems with several brands.
And I will say that it is not easy. When we cook pasta, we have 3 production kitchens. We're doing about 12,000 meals a day, and so when you're cooking that amount of pasta, it just becomes problematic. You certainly have to batch it, but the idea that all of it's going to be cooked al dente, chilled and held properly is a big project. We have time for one last question, and Beth, this question is from Colleen. Can you talk about AP/EP on vegetables? And she says it's kind of an advanced concept and needs some clarity.
Okay. Is it our Colleen?
Yes, it is our Colleen. So Colleen Donnelly, who worked with Beth and I for many years and is now the executive chef of
Indian Harvest.
Or In Harvest now, has worked on a lot of recipes and has done some recipe development out in California as well. So
yeah, we were just having a conversation about AP/EP. So as purchased versus edible portion, and this is pertinent, so pertinent in scratch cooking. And in the way that Horizon Software works, it is assuming that the item is as purchased. So when it says broccoli 20, the case type is a Crown 20-pound case, 4 pounds, it is assuming that it's as purchased. It's not 4 pounds prepped. And under recipe instructions, where it says pre-preparation instructions, anything that is using a yield factor, which is what Horizon Software does, is it uses a yield factor, and the RD has to input the yield factor into the system when they're writing the recipe in the software. But in the software, there's actually another button, but in this case, we put the yield factor here. So broccoli is factored at 81%, and that's pertinent for the people that are prepping. They need to understand that they need 4 pounds of whole broccoli crowns to create the recipe, and this recipe is based on a yield factor of 81%, which is your edible portion. Did I explain it well enough, Colleen?
I think you did explain it, and we can have another webinar really on recipes and stuff, but how that plays into how much you need to order is really the difference. How much you're going to need to order given the yield factor you have. That could be its own little presentation all in itself.
One of the things to remember is if you do, when people are utilizing software or a recipe like this to plan their purchasing to make a particular recipe, if you scale the recipe to your required yield, that recipe is also going to print out at the bottom of the recipe page that I showed you before, the printout for the recipe. That last section is the pull ticket, so it's going to tell you how many cases or pounds of something you need to have on hand in order to produce the recipe. So that's based on as purchased.
With that, it is 12 o'clock. I want to thank everyone for attending our seminar. Thank you so much. I really hope you spend some more time on the website. What we showed you today was really the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more here. It's been a labor of love for all of us, 18 months and $500,000 to produce this website that has all of these tools. They're all in the public domain. We want you to use them. We love your feedback. We're working on the site daily to make it better, to add new recipes, to put new tools up here. And we are going to have one more Get to Know the Website webinar in this school year, and that's on May 21st. So if you have any colleagues that haven't signed up for a webinar, please ask them to sign up for the next one. We will have one more Getting to Know the Website in August, and then we'll start with a series of specific things, possibly even something like recipe yields. We're going to have a whole suite of webinars on specific topics, starting with back to school. So thank you very, very much, and I hope you enjoy the website.